This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. Got a wonderful guest, a first-time guest, and a very exciting book. We've got author Brandon Wainwright coming on. He's going to talk to us about his book, Tyson's Gift, How an 8-Pound Canine Became a Man's Greatest Spiritual Guide. So this is right up my alley, as everybody knows. So I look forward to talking to Brandon a little bit about the book and his journey. And we'll sort of take it from there. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms, and our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Joining me now is author Brandon Wainwright and his new book, Tyson's Gift, How an 8-Pound Canine Became a Man's Greatest Spiritual Guide. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the reading through the book and the journey and getting to know your dog and some of the other animals in the book and everything. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, your spiritual guide and what exactly does that mean? How does your canine become your spiritual guide?
Tyson was a really special dog in the sense that a special dog would be special to a lot of people. He came into my life actually at a time when my wife and I were just getting engaged, and I had a lot of kind of baggage animals. I had a number of them taken away, dogs specifically taken away from me as a child, and he helped me to heal up over those losses. And we grew close very quickly, although he put me through the ringer in order to win over his trust. It took me about 2 months to really win him over, which I can't even believe it took that long as it ended up being. So in life, he opened my heart up in a way that it hadn't been opened up since I was a child. And then when he passed away, that's when the real spiritual awakening took place. I just, at the time I was in my mid 40s and I had had plenty of loss in my life, just like anybody at that age. Plenty of loved ones pass away, even other animals, but I wasn't ready for losing him. I didn't have any kind to reflect on, and I couldn't make peace. So I found myself on a spiritual search. And in the process, long story short, I ended up communicating with Tyson from the other side through animal communicators, which you know all so well, and also spiritual mediums. It's special, just any soul. And through that process, I found that it was just definitive for me. The messages that were communicated and the facts that were communicated about his life and our life together, it was just so specific that I couldn't deny the existence that he really was communicating with me. And so that once then it was still about him, but I started to want to learn more about just spirit. And so I went forward from there and ended up learning Reiki, which I know you're a Reiki master. And at this point, I've become a Reiki master. And it's just really opened up my whole life on a spiritual level and given me so much peace. I'm just so thankful for it.
Yeah. And for those, for the audience listening, once they pick up the book, they'll get a nice, wonderful picture of Tyson. But I love Tyson. He's got his little Tyson cape on, like a little Superman. So he's a little Chihuahua. So that's a very cool dude.
Chihuahua Dachshund mix. He was
Chihuahua Dachshund. 3/4
Chihuahua, quarter Dachshund. So
I'm sure he reminded you of that every day.
It was a perfect mix.
So when you, before all this happened, you said you sort of, I'm assuming part of the grieving process, trying to understand it and connect with him. Do you feel you were a very spiritual person before this, or religious person, or somewhere like most of us we'll say in our 40s that are still trying to figure it all out?
I would say that I was spiritual, but I didn't have any specific beliefs, or even, it wasn't something that I thought I would have told you that I was spiritual, but at the time, the reality I wasn't really paying all that much attention to it. In terms of religion, I was raised in an agnostic household. So I would say, especially my dad was spiritual, but there was no structure to it. We never went to church, except for a real brief period when I was in high school. And so I didn't have that background, although I did try religion on a number of different times. I tried several different religions, and none of them really took. I wanted to be a part of them. I wanted to be a part of the spiritual communities, but I couldn't buy into the specific beliefs of each of them. And so I struggled mightily too, because at one point I was engaged to a woman who was very religious, and ultimately the fact that I wouldn't convert, although I did try to convert, it caused us to break up. So it wasn't anything that I was unfamiliar with, but I had come to a place where I had just accepted that I didn't know what was out there for sure. I believed that there was something, but I didn't have any specific belief about it. And I was okay with that. I had just come to the conclusion that I was never going to know, and that's okay. And I shouldn't be down on myself about that. But, when Tyson passed away, and the thing is, as I processed through this, it was very organic. I didn't think of it consciously until, it took a couple of days of grieving before I realized that I was struggling with making peace with where he was at. And that was really what initially sparked the whole thing and got me reading the books that I read that, kind of gave me liftoff, if you will.
And that's part of that overall healing process. I do, in addition to the Reiki master work and communicating with animals and lost animal work, a big part of what I do for clients and their animals is the process of what happens when an animal is, how do you know when it's time for the animal and what are their wishes when that time is to transition? And then how do you process it afterwards? Because it's our human nature to beat ourselves up over everything. Whether we think we're the most enlightened person in the world or Zen person in the world, we're not, because we're always going to beat ourselves up. And especially when it comes to our animals, because unless you open yourself up to be able to connect with them and communicate with them, you don't know. And so afterwards, it's very common to say, did I do the right thing? Did I do it too soon? After? Where is he? Is he at? Is he going to come back around? Did I do too much? Did I do too little? So all these things, and part of that whole grieving process is there's really no timeline. It's your journey and it's your process, and you have to go through what makes you whole and heal, and turns those sad tears into happy tears. And that's the thing I always try to relate to people.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's definitely an individual process. Fortunately for us, with Tyson, he had a brain tumor that we had, tried to deal with for not actually. It was only maybe about 4 months ultimately that we were really dealing with it on a acute level. So, but it was very clear that it was the right thing. We didn't struggle with that decision. It was just a matter of, dealing with it, dealing with the whole process of it. So, but even, here it is. He passed away August 19th, 2000, or no, not August, April 19th, 2018. So, here it is over 2 years later, and time flies. And I had a book signing over the weekend, and so I had a big poster up of the book cover, and Tyson's there looking back at me as I'm reading, pages from the book. And I looked into his eyes on the poster, and it made me get a little melancholy even now.
Yeah.
So it's still processing even now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you're on this journey and you're trying to make sense of it all, and you're reading books and you're contacting, I'm assuming before this, you had not really thought much or haven't contacted, animal communicators and spiritual guides and healing masters, or was that part of something you had done for yourself or others later? Yeah.
No, not at all. To be honest with you, I didn't even know about them. I read the book Animals and the Afterlife by Kim Sheridan. And it's the reason I read the book was because I realized that I was struggling with making peace with him in the afterlife. So I went on Amazon and I punched in Animals in the Afterlife specifically, and that title came up. And so, and I wasn't looking for necessarily any answers. I was just looking for some peace of mind, that even if it was fiction, I was just looking for something that made me feel better. And in the book, as you know, I'm sure you've read it,
Sure.
it had all these real life experiences that she had with animal communicators, reincarnation of different pets that she had. And it was so compelling that I thought, well, either she's literally crazy or this is true and it's really worth checking into. At first, the thing that motivated me the most was the idea that I could get him to come back to me. You know, I wanted to, and I pretty much begged him to when I had my sessions, which, you know, I know any spiritual metaphysician will tell you that they're not going to come back if it's not part of, you know, in their spiritual best interest. But still, I was just begged him, you know, if it's good for you, it would be good for me. So please come back. But then, you know, in the process, I found that there was a whole new spiritual world out there that I just hadn't really connected with. And it was something that I really, really wanted to pursue. So the motivation of that pain really brought me into a whole exciting new world.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think during this, I mean, was there one big aha moment, or was it a collection of, reading the books and the material and talking to various people and doing their readings and consulting with those that do this on a regular basis? Was it a collection of things?
It was, you know, it's definitely a collection of things, because I was, you know, I'm a police officer by trade. So, you know, I'm not that I'm closed-minded or anything, but definitely I was skeptical of all things. I was open, and I actually wanted to believe in it, because I wanted to believe that Tyson, you know, was still there. But I wasn't gonna. It wasn't going to be something I was going to allow myself to just jump into out of desperation, out of emotional desperation. It was going to have to be something that it was, at least to some extent, proven to me. And so the first session, well, I had a couple animal communicator sessions where it really didn't convince me, actually. They were great, but they weren't specific enough to him to convince me, which, you know, as I was going through that process, thinking, well, what did you expect? You know, it's not, their job isn't to convince you. So, but when I got to the third one, I told Lady Sandy Casca, she's in the book, you know, that I'm open, but I am skeptical. And the first two sessions didn't really knock my socks off. If anything, they left me more skeptical. So what ended up happening with that one was that she was so just amazing. She described my relationship with him, my wife's relationship with him, my daughter's relationship with him. My wife's and ours were subtly different, but they were different nonetheless. And she hit it nail on the head when she described it. And my daughter's was definitely very specific. And so I was like, whoa, there's no way you could know this unless you were like part of our family. And then Tyson had a bum leg. And so I asked her about his leg, and she right away said, oh, his rear right leg, right? And she described to me what she believed was going on based on what he was telling her. And it made so much sense. And so I wouldn't say I was fully convinced at that point, but that was the first time that I really felt myself believe, because I felt it in my gut that this was real, you know, and it was so convincing. After that, I had a session. It kind of unfolded, and I explain all this in the book, but I had a session with a medium, spiritual medium, who's since become a friend of mine, extremely talented, but not somebody. And by the way, the first one, like you, she found herself doing this stuff late in life. So she actually still practices law. So this isn't somebody that decided to do this because she was trying to escape reality or trying to, you know, a charlatan of some kind. That this is something that called to her. And the medium, she's an interior designer who has her own firm and still has her own firm, although she's become doing more and more of this stuff. But she always had the gift, and she kept it in the closet, though, because she was afraid of ridicule. And it just kind of exploded in her. And she was referred to me by a friend of mine. And when I went for that session, I did it mostly out of curiosity and just in the spirit of exploration. And in that session, I I communicated with my grandmother, my uncle, my aunt, and Tyson. And the communication with Tyson was even more specific than it had been. It was way more convincing than the first one. And my uncle and my grandma passed away when I was 16. So they weren't even on my radar, to be honest with you. I wasn't even, not that I didn't still love them and think of them from time to time, but I wasn't looking to connect with them. I figured they were wherever they are now, probably in a whole other realm.
Right. I think at that point, that portal had been open, and that's why I tell people about, especially from the animal communication side, is when that portal opens up, when you open yourself up to accepting what you see, feel, hear, taste, smell, these type of things, especially from the animals, in my case, that's a perfect portal for them to communicate. They're waiting for that. They want to have an opportunity to be able to communicate with their human companions, to answer questions or share things with them. And the thing I always I wouldn't say caution, that's probably too harsh of a word, but if you're going into this, especially if you're doing your first communication session, open yourself up and don't go in with any particular expectations. And really whether it's communicator or a medium or whatever they practice, they're receiving information and working as a conduit between you and whoever they're communicating with, or your animal in particular. So, your animal in this case may not tell you that the favorite bone was, a pink play bone. That may not even be important to them, but they may share that just to let you know that, yeah, that's me. That's me. I'll tell you which one of the play toys I like the best. That way you'll know it's me. And then I can tell you some things that I really want to tell you. So I always tell people to open themselves up to it. And because if you go into anything, it's just like life. If you go anything with your guard up, then you'll never be able to feel anything. You'll never be able to accept anything that comes your way.
Yeah. I would say that I wouldn't say my guard was up, but I definitely was skeptical. And that's, I had a lot of misconceptions about what a spiritual medium or intuitive, how they received information too. I pictured it being very, like, basically they're watching a high definition movie and it's very precise and everything should come through. But I've come to realize through my own practices and I've also done quite a few, sessions since along the way, and every intuitive has a certain gift, and they all have different levels of ability, and they have their own ways that they see the world. Some are very visual, some are very auditory, and you have, like you said, you have to go into it with a very open mind and take what's given, because maybe at that point you're not meant to hear certain things that you would like to hear,
Exactly.
So yeah, I wish I had known that when I went in, because it would have made them process so much easier.
Exactly. So now you're talking about, you mentioned that you're a police officer. And had you tried to hide or downplay your spiritual journey until the book came out, or were you open with your colleagues and even friends and family? And if so, how did they, or how are they processing it now?
No, I've always been very open about it. Once I started down, the things that were happening to me were so, when you believe that this is the truth and you're experiencing these, at least for me, I had no compulsion to hide it. It was so exciting and so uplifting, and it was bringing me so much peace. I was trying to share it with everybody I could. And yeah, family members, some of them mildly skeptical, but not in a ridiculing kind of way. My immediate family, my wife and daughter, definitely have always been very supportive. And especially once I started doing Reiki, my wife is my biggest customer. and even my daughter comes to me and asks me for it. She's only 12 at this point. So, but my police colleagues, I think they probably make fun of me behind my back, but not in a malicious kind of way. But I've had quite a few different experiences with them where I've offered them Reiki and worked on them and had them like kind of dumbfounded, and so they definitely, quite a few of them are very open to it. Even the ones that kind of look at me with the raised eyebrow, it's not that they don't believe, it's just that they've never had any of those experiences themselves, at least not that they're conscious of. And so they don't put me down. Fortunately, I've been a cop for a while, so I'm not brand new. So they're not thinking that I'm some weirdo that they can't trust,
No hazing, no rookie hazing here.
No, yeah. So no, actually, my personality is such that when I'm really passionate about something, when I believe it's true, I'm not afraid to shout it from the mountaintops. But I'll admit, when somebody looks at me like their eyes are crossing, it's a little bit discouraging, but I still keep it up.
You hit it right on the head. It's a journey. Everybody has their own journey, and we resonate and vibrate at our own level. And there's no level that's higher or lower. We just vibrate at our own level. So things that resonate with you may not resonate with me, and we find commonalities. But like you had mentioned, things, especially those that are wanting to communicate with their loved ones and their animals that have passed, those that need Reiki. Reiki's been around for thousands of years, and it's now becoming better and better known. It's being practiced and taught at major hospitals and universities. So, it's not a new thing. It's just it hasn't had a lot of pub, hasn't.
Yeah.
It's getting here. But the key thing is, once you open yourself up to it and you try it and you see the benefits of it, and then you realize, wait a minute, yeah, this isn't so crazy after all. And actually, it makes me feel a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's changed a lot too over the years. I've been doing this for 17 years now. There's others who have been doing it longer than this, as far as the animal communication part of it. And, when I even first started, it was, a lot of skepticism, a lot of people, raising eyebrows, some people coming. And the reason I asked that question was, when I said I was going to leave corporate America, this, executive level job after 20 years to do this full time, people were trying to process it. And there were friends that no longer were friends because they couldn't vibrate at that level and couldn't accept that. But guess what? It opened up the door to more and greater friends that were at the right vibration for me at that time. And then family members, same thing. It's they're like, okay, well, some can accept it, and some are like, well, okay, I'll just call you a dog trainer, or I'll call you the dog whisperer, like the guy on the TV. Yeah, that's how I'll process it. It's like, okay, well, you process it how you want to process it. I'm just here to help the animals and their human companions.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. When you see how much good it's bringing, it kind of it overrides any of the letdown that you're having from different shifts that are happening in your life. I think
that's it.
It's like one of those things, like you've seen the truth, and now it's like, well, I can't. There's no turning back now.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And that's the path you're on. That's what's resonating with you. So that's very cool. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back right after this and continue our conversation with Brandon Wainwright, talk to a little bit more about the book, Tyson's Gift. Also want to talk to Brandon a little bit about writing the book and getting it published. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
For those fortunate to have experienced the deep bond and unconditional love of a companion animal, the death that follows can be one of the most difficult and misunderstood losses to go through. Many times, this devastating loss goes unrecognized and trivialized by family and friends, leaving grieving pet parents struggling to find healthy ways to cope with the loss. In And I Love You Still, a thoughtful guide and remembrance journal for healing the loss of a pet, Dr. Julianne Corbin calls attention to the difficulties unique to the loss of a beloved pet and provides an interactive and compassionate guide to help you process your loss and work towards coming to a place of peace and healing. For those interested in journal therapy and looking for a professionally written and compassionate resource to help understand and reconcile the grief associated with the loss of your pet, this book is for you. And I Love You Still, a thoughtful guide and remembrance journal by Julianne Corbin, is now available for purchase on Amazon and other major book retailers.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our conversation with author Brandon Wainwright and his book and memoir, Tyson's Gift, how an 8-pound canine became a man's greatest spiritual guide. Now, Brandon, when putting together the book and going through this journey, and people pick up a copy of the book, what do you hope they gain from it? What's the one or more walkaways you hope that they get from the book?
Well, first off, I hope that they, about half the book is written in a very Marley and me kind of fashion, where it's telling the story from my point of view of Tyson's life. And Tyson was a real character. So he had a lot of different antics that he did throughout his life. I think his life was very uplifting. I think people will enjoy that part of it. Animal lovers anyway, anybody that ever had a pet, I think will be able to relate to that. But beyond that, the main theme that I'm hoping people walk away at least with some compelling thought about it is that we live on. It's not some abstract idea that when you pass away, you go to heaven, whatever that means, or that you're in a better place now. I think when people say that, they believe it, but I think it's such an abstract idea when you really stop and think about it honestly, that it doesn't bring the kind of peace that it could. And I think when you have experiences like the ones I describe in the book, you start to really realize in no uncertain terms that the reality is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. And that's what I hope that people will walk away believing and understanding. And if at least, I always tell people that if you read Animals and the Afterlife, the stories in there are just as compelling as my stories, and they were enough to make me want to go on my own journey. But there's a big difference between reading about it and experiencing it for yourself. So I hope it will motivate people to, open themselves up to exploring this a little bit. I mean, there's more than ever, there's places and people, for you to connect with that have lots of experience with it. And that's one thing that I've found through my process is that this isn't as underground as people want to believe. There's people all over the place that either have had experiences like this that they're not sure what to do with, or people that are very conscious of it and know exactly what's going on. The more people I talk to about it and share with, the more I find that this understanding and this spiritual awakening is happening throughout the world and in our communities right under our nose, And so I hope it'll kind of give them a push to go on their own journey and find their own peace.
Very good. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Well, let's talk about writing the book. Now, I'm assuming this is your first published book?
Yep, it sure is.
How did you find that whole process from sitting down and putting all this into some sort of a form that people could and want to read, to the whole editing process and then getting it published and getting it promoted?
I was thinking the experiences were so life-changing for me that I was thinking, man, this would make a really good book, or even a movie or something someday. I talk about it very briefly in the book, but I worked in the film industry for a little bit. That's what I went to college for originally, I wanted to direct movies, and so that's what I was thinking, but it was just an idea. And actually my first Reiki teacher told me that she believed that it was very important that I write a book about Tyson and me. Like she said, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a big part of your life mission is to write this book, which, it was very affirming because then I'm definitely going to write it because I was already kind of thinking about it. But initially it was really daunting. I thought, I've had these compelling experiences, but is it enough people are going to want to read about it? I mean, I'm nothing special. Some people might like it, but I've read enough books now to understand that there's lots of people that have these experiences. And so I thought, well, Tyson, because as I was saying before, I wanted him to come back. And at that point, based on the different readings that I had and such, and different experiences that I had, I believed that he was going to reincarnate. And I thought, well, I finally gave up trying to write the book because I just was having trouble getting started on it. I decided, well, I'll write it when he comes back because then I'll have a whole complete story. And another spiritual teacher that I ended up connecting with later told me, oh no, you have everything you need right now to write that book. In fact, she went as far as to say that Tim, when he comes back, that'll be book 2. And so I kind of, I definitely, this is something that I probably wouldn't have done on my own without these influences, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have had the courage, I don't think, to start it because I wouldn't have believed that it was going to come out right at that point without their push. But I took it to heart and I sat down and I didn't even outline it. I just sat down, had faith, meditated before most of the set writing sessions that I did and asked for guidance and asked for Tyson to help me. And I just wrote and it just flowed. Once I got started on it and I started just telling the story, it flowed very well. It really wasn't hard at all, especially the part telling the story of his life. I took a lot of pleasure in it, actually. It was a very cathartic experience. And I was taking a lot of joy in memorializing his life too, because it'll be there for posterity. The harder part came when he passed away. I cried when I was writing the chapter. It was really hard. But once describing all the experiences that I had, but as I was doing it, it was like, well, actually, this is some pretty good stuff. He doesn't have to come back. This is good enough on its own. And you already know what the punchline is at the end, so maybe I probably should say that for now. But
that's right.
There is a bit of an epilogue after I finished the book, and then I had to make an addendum later. But yeah, the writing part really wasn't near as hard as I thought it was going to be. I'd written, I shouldn't say quite a few, but a number of movie scripts over the years, and I can type pretty fast, so that process isn't hard. And I write regularly for work, although it's a different type of writing. So it wasn't as hard as I thought. But the publishing part, yeah, that was way more difficult because I had no idea what I was doing. And I still don't know what I'm doing, to be honest with you. I started sending the manuscript out to whatever publishers I thought might be interested in this type of subject matter. And long story short, I wasn't getting too far. I had a couple offers for hybrid publishing offers, one of which was, I think, very legitimate, but it was going to cost me a lot in order to do it. And the guy their representative finally told me, he says, you know what, if I were you, I would do this on a more self-published route, because you're not going to make money on this. And I don't want you to end up, being financially messed up from it. So, which was pretty darn honorable, because they were really interested in the book too. And then, and there was another hybrid company that I was all excited because that was the first contract I received, and I was all flattered and everything. But I got an attorney to go through the contract and found that it was very much less than favorable to me. And I was advised to turn the contract down unless they made some pretty reasonable changes, and they refused. So I let that one go. And ultimately, just through I think it was very serendipitous, I found a self-publishing company. So they, Glass Spider Publishing, wonderful people, very skilled. They did a wonderful job, and it's a professional publisher. So he did the editing for me, did the layout. Me and a friend of mine, we designed the cover together. He did all the actual graphics design, but the actual layout and everything, I should say Tyson helped too. You'll have to read about that.
There you go.
But as far as the end result of the book, I think it came out. I don't think I could have asked for it a better job than what Glass Spider did. And Vince Font, the owner, I mean, they just did a wonderful job and gave me a lot of input as to how they believed I should try to get this out there. And so, but this took from the time I started looking until the time I decided that they were going to be my publisher. It was like 8 months, I think, 7 or 8 months. And so, it was very much a process of just kind of learning the hard way. And once it's out, now I'm just, slowly trying to get it out there. And I'm taking, like the place I buy my vitamin store, they've got it on for sale. And it's actually sold there because I think it's like-minded people,
There you go.
Stuff like that. So I'm hoping word of mouth will get it to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's changed a lot over the years, in entertainment in general, just has changed so much over the years. We, in the TV and movie industry, look at the changes from streaming being this weird thing that it's a fantasy world. Now streaming dominates more than cable. And it's the same thing with publishing. Self-publishing years and years ago was like, oh, okay, well, that's not a reputable book. To now, it's a very reputable way to get your message out and you promote it. So it's one of those things where you have to decide what you want from the book, what's the message, and how do you want to get the message out there. And that doesn't always mean that you have to find an agent and have them, spend a week promoting your book and then move you on to the next one.
Yeah,
So-
I think in the long haul, when I get through all this, and I'll look back on it and say that this was really the best way for it to happen. But it has been a little bit daunting. I will, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But I've also enjoyed it. It's
Yeah.
even it's in that slow lift off right now. But I've had enough input from people where they tell me how much it's helped them, and even like I've got friends that I've reconnected with from high school that read it and reached out to me. And so I know it's making its mark. It's but it's just the more you hear about that, the more you want it to make a mark,
Absolutely. Well, I always tell people the cool thing is, write a book, write a story, publish it. Because once it's published, it's in the Library of Congress. You've made your mark. It's there forever, for eternity. So just like this book, Tyson's Gift is now there for eternity and hopefully on everybody's bookshelf. So everybody go pick up a copy of Tyson's Gift, How an 8-Pound Canine Became Man's Greatest Spiritual Guide. Brandon, how can people find out more about you and follow what's going on with the book and your journey with Tyson?
The best way is to go to tysonsgift.com. TYSONSGIFT.com. That's my webpage, and you can read all about the book. There's a link there that takes you to Amazon, to the Amazon page where you can buy it. It's also on barnesandnoble.com and a number of other booksellers. That would probably be the easiest way. And people can also, if they choose to, they can reach out to me through that there's a contact us page on there, and they can email me if they want to.
Very good.
But that's the simplest, is tysonsgift.com.
All right. Sounds great. Well, everybody definitely go out and pick up a copy of the book, Tyson's Gift, How an 8-Pound Canine Became a Man's Greatest Spiritual Guide by Brandon Wainwright. Brandon, hey, congratulations on the book. Next time you chat with Tyson, tell him I said, hey, and I'll look forward to chatting with you somewhere down the road.
Reach out yourself.
That's right. I can do that. All right, my friend. I appreciate that very much. So good luck with everything, and we'll talk to you somewhere down the road.
Okay, Tim. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank the producers and sponsors for making this show possible. So if you have any questions, comments, ideas for the show, drop us a line at petliferadio.com. And while you're there, check out all the other wonderful hosts and shows. It's a cornucopia of great animal entertainment, so everybody will enjoy that. It's at petliferadio.com. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life, put in a book, a blog, an article, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights, Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.